Hey guys, it's Michael, and I'm back for another reaction. We're back for part two of Mystery Flesh Pit National Park. This this was not what I expected it to be. I expected it to kind of be like a urban legend kind of thing, but no, it's like a creative story, ARG or something like that. And it's really interesting, very interesting, the different like layers of this creature that's underground. But I'm pretty excited to get back into it, so let's go ahead and get back into it.
Through this massive elevator into a central thing called the Lower Visitor Center, located in the essentially throat of this creature. And as you can see from this image, it
Oh, it's a
is a
cool image.
huge
Like a
multi-level
UFO.
shopping mall with vendors and gift shops and restaurants and everything else you could imagine. In the description for it, it says, "Your adventure into the wonder and magnificence of the Mystery Flesh Pit National Park begins as your enclosed gondola begins to descend down into the darkness, away from the blistering heat and light of the Permian Basin. Just when the 20-minute twisting and turning ride down into the maw of this immense organism feels like it might never end, an illuminated structure comes into view beneath your feet. Step out of the elevator car and into the well-lit and comfortable lobby of the Lower Visitor Center, your gateway to an unforgettable visit to one of the world's most unique natural wonders." So this thing is so far down there, it takes 20 minutes on an elevator to get to a 8-story shopping mall. And if you look back at the maps of this entire thing, that is still nothing compared to the full size of this creature. What is interesting is that in several of the supplemental materials, you can find audio like this that shows what noises played whenever you make it to the visitor center.
Hello, welcome to the Lower Visitor Center. Here, you can start your incredible otherworldly adventures with our child-friendly tours. For the daring thrill seeker, sign up for private expedition orientation classes at the front desk. For other questions, feel free to ask any of our park rangers. Remember, adventure awaits in the underground.
Also, inside of these restaurants in the Lower Visitor Center, for a long time it was said that they served meat from the cave wall itself, which is
Ew,
gross.
bro.
However, in one of the Q&As
Nasty.
that the creator did, he said that this is not true. However, people have ate the meat and says it tastes too gamey to serve, but that the giant lobster things taste delicious. And I've also talked at length already about the amniotic springs, also known as the pleasure domes. But another superstructure that you come across, which is actually at the furthest traced or at least mapped out point in the pits, is the Intra-Park Wellness Resort. This is essentially a giant resort or ski lodge type thing that is built onto the walls of what is basically the stomach of this creature, overlooking something called the Greater Gastric Sea, which, remember, everything in the pits
It's a giant
dark, so
stomach.
you can't see forever. But as far as the people can see, it is a endless sea of bile and stomach juices. And this resort has pretty much everything from beauty shops, convenience shops, a comedy depot, an arcade system, a techno bis, which, wait, what? A dance club. It has a dance club because of course it does. This entire thing is a monument to man's arrogance. There's a petting zoo as well where you can pet the declawed lobster creatures. Anyway, and in all the details about the spa treatments and the thermal things you can go to, it talks about the controls that you can have for your room yourself, like a humidity control, and also a window cleaning knob, because since you are overlooking a sea of gastric juices in your hotel room, they keep popping up on the window, so you have these giant wipers to clean it off, which, again, disgusting. I should also mention, speaking of humidity, you're inside of a living thing, so anywhere that is not on the main trail where they have constant AC systems running is 98.6 degrees and 100% humidity, so miserable, which is
Oh,
something a
that's
lot of the
horrible.
miners talked about having to deal with, the constant heat and pressure being inside of this thing, because you're essentially a foreign pathogen inside of a giant body. So it's absolutely unbearable if you're not in one of the park designated areas. And even then you could still get killed by the lobster creatures, so just don't do it. One of the last details of the actual park layout that I want to mention, besides the fact that if you're not thinking about already, everywhere through the park has to be held open with stents so that the muscles or systems don't close back around you, is the emergency telephones that are placed throughout several different points in the park. Like on this poster, you can see that there are these phones placed around that were done by AT&T, and in the description, it describes that 150 miles of cable were laid as a means of getting
Holy
communications
crap.
outside of this organism. Also, seasoned hikers and park field staff referred to these as lighthouses, as walking through the dark with your flashlight, you would see these random blue phones while walking along your path. Which, with all of these, I want you to imagine like the flesh and the noises and just the fact you're walking through something's giant body system, and to just be walking through such an alien place and come across a blue telephone box is so cosmically terrifying.
I love it so much.
Another thing to mention is public reaction to the pit itself. And as we can see through several images, the town of Gumption, Texas, that the pit is located in, absolutely loved the tourism and capitalized on it. However, some were not so happy about it. For example, an advertisement that was hung on hotel doors within the pit is an ad for someone called Homer Litfer Butcher, who works as an attorney for people who were injured while in the flesh pit. And as we can see on an April 1981 issue of Sanctified, the magazine
really
of
cool.
the Southern Baptist Association, it says on the cover, Baptist Convention denounces exploration of mystery flesh pit, calls it a foul tunnel to Lucifer himself, buried by the Almighty, enjoyed by the damned. And then in a very interesting picture, we can see a image of Dante's Inferno comparing the pit itself to the mouth of hell, which is really cool, and I think I agree with the church on this one. There's also 3 Q&As, or at least 3 so far, that Trevor has done to...
I don't know if you guys have heard. You probably haven't, but my stomach's growled like 4 times. It's because it's early in the morning. It's like 7:30 in the morning. I woke up like an hour ago, and I took a shower, and I was like, I gotta eat something, but I'm like, I gotta record actually. Let me record and then I'll eat something. So yeah, if you hear my stomach growling, I'm sorry.
To explain people's questions about the entire world of Flesh Pit National Park. And one of the questions that he was asked is, how long could someone live in the flesh pit long term? To which he said, archaeological evidence of prehistoric human activity within the pit has led to conjecture among scientists that long-term habitation within the anatomy of the pit is possible.
So
and
someone lived
unlikely.
before.
Without modern technology and tools, any humans living long-term within the entrails of the superorganism would need to adapt to the perpetual darkness, subpar oxygen, constant high humidity heat, and continually changing fleshscape in order to survive. Fleshscape is a fantastic word. Oh my gosh. Over hundreds of generations, when combined with poorly understood long-term effects of consuming amniotic ballast fluid, it is entirely possible that humans adapt to this lifestyle would be fundamentally different from modern humans. Or in other words, if people lived long-term down there, they would probably adapt into these amorphous creatures like the other things that are down there. Who's to say some of that stuff down there isn't people, but whatever. A couple things that I can't find exactly where it was mentioned because I've read through so many of these pamphlets and I can't remember where everything was, but while first exploring the pit, they came across armor from around the period of the Spanish Inquisition, which implies that people got there way earlier, or at the very least they were dragged underground by the things that were there. And one of the more interesting things said in one of these Q&As is someone asked the question, are there any Jumanos, Apache, or Comanche, the American Indian people native to the surrounding area, folktales or oral histories concerning the superorganism? To which Trevor answers, there is a fascinating legend from the near Caddo people by the name of Sacred Medicine Water, which I will reproduce here. The favor of the Great Spirit rested on the abundant forest, flowers, songbirds, and small animals of these quiet hills. Then a fierce dragon devastated the land, bringing disease and hunger and hatred and greed on the people. The Indian nations pleaded with the Great Spirit to subdue the dragon into a deep slumber, and the night of all the heavenly forces contrived to bury it under the world, where it shakes the earth even today. Once the Great Spirit had vanquished the dragon, he caused pure water to gush up through the earth from the beast and asked that his favorite place be held neutral ground so all can share in the healing waters. So here we see this dragon mentioned in
So it's a
Native
dragon.
American folklore is the thing that got knocked out and buried underground. Because if you remember, this thing was completely underground until the oil man Jim Jackson found it in 1973. And these healing waters that it mentions the people would drink that came up from the ground after the dragon was put to sleep are quite possibly the amniotic fluids that we have found in the current day have healing properties. So, if this creature was knocked into a deep slumber, then we better hope it never wakes up. Which it definitely did, and that would be the situation that led to the shutdown of the park in the 2007 catastrophe. Now, the incident is hinted at several times in different stories, or images I should say we come across, because everything that's shown, all the brochures, are relics of the now shut down park being put together by this creator online. That is, until we get to the official U.S. Commission on Geobiological Resource and Public Safety, who did a final incident report on what happened to the park. In the executive summary, they say, at 9:41 p.m. Central Standard Time on July the 4th of 2007, the Permian Basin Superorganism Natural Preserve, known colloquially as Mystery Flesh Pit National Park, experienced a catastrophic disaster which resulted in over 750 fatalities and over 1,800 major injuries. In the weeks following the incident, approximately 18,000 individuals from the surrounding communities sought medical and psychological treatment for ailments including breathing problems, chest pains, shortness of breath, nausea, birth defects, hallucinations, depression, anxiety, internal bleeding, sore throat, and headaches as a direct result of contact with gastric ejecta which had been introduced to the atmosphere. Investigators have concluded that this disaster was chiefly characterized by a premature geobiological consumption event caused by the catastrophic failure of critical park infrastructure to constrain and limit the gastric, motor, and neurological actions of the Permian Basin superorganism. Investigators have concluded that the failure of these critical safety measures are the direct result of negligent practices by the primary site operating contractor Anodyne Deep Earth Mining, a subsidiary of Anodyne Incorporated. So essentially, they are saying that 750 people died and a whole lot more were injured because of negligence on Anodyne's part, and then it goes by a step-by-step collection of what exactly happened on the night of July the 4th, 2007, and we are going to go through that report now. So, start of relevant timeline. At 10:29 a.m. on July the 4th, unreasonably high rains forced park
And it would be on Independence Day. That's so funny.
administrators to cancel a July 4th concert and fireworks display scheduled to take place on the surface park grounds. Many visitors who had already purchased tickets to the event become upset, and a decision is made to extend the park hours until midnight for those who had purchased event tickets, and that was their first mistake. 8 p.m. normal closing time for the national park. A typical shift change of reduced night staff in the control room takes place. 9:16 p.m. Harvesting crews working in the western extremities of the organism set a new extraction record to meet a quota for bonuses in time for the holiday weekend. 9:30 p.m. Control room operators initiate a routine system self-test and discover a relay fault error resulting from increased electrical demand from mining equipment and tourist infrastructure. A control room operator logs the fault and notifies an on-duty engineer. Basically because they were running over shift and because on another end of the park they were trying
Used
to
a
mine
lot of
really fast,
electricity.
the electronics became overwhelmed. 9:41 p.m. Water drainage from surface rain into the entry orifice begins to collect in the sand gullet. Drainage pumps are automatically activated by a sensor system but fail to initialize due to the relay fault. An emergency backup pump running on a separate emergency circuit is automatically activated. 9:42 p.m. A critical alarm in the control room alerts operators that the emergency water pump has seized and is inoperative. Under-lubrication of the pump's impeller bushings resulted in corrosion due to the moist interior of the flesh pit environment. Because yeah, if you've got all this equipment inside something as humid as a living, breathing organism, stuff's gonna rust. 9:48 p.m. Technicians arrive at the primary pump station to discover the sand gullet almost completely submerged. Water begins to pour over the dorsal respiratory ridge and into bronchial bulbules. Control room operators divert power to hydraulic stent rams to brace for expected choke response. So essentially, normally, water goes down into a first little dip inside of the throat and pumps move it out, but because the pumps are not working because they're rusted, the water keeps pouring and it's now pouring into the lungs of this thing. Which again, this has never been a problem for hundreds if not thousands of years because it was all underground, but because we had to go doo-wop and then blow the lid off of it and then build an entire amusement park inside of this thing's mouth, it's causing problems. So all of those giant rods that are placed inside of it to keep the throat open all double down and brace, because if this thing coughs, it's gonna be really bad. 9:51. Technicians A repair the relay stuff as control staff reset the park's electrical grid. The grid is offline for 45 seconds. The automatic PA system does not notify guests as the system is scheduled to automatically shut down at the normal 8 p.m. closing time. The temporary lapse of lighting causes many guests to become panicked and return to the main gantry lift at the lower visitor center. So the park's supposed to be shut down, and because it's supposed to be shut down, no one is told by the PA system that all the lights are going to go off. So once it's blackout, people panic and start running for the elevator. 9:52 p.m. A choking action from the organism begins 31 seconds into the electrical reset. The main dorsal trunk violently flexes. Lack of power to hydraulic arming rams causes irreparable damage to several sections of internal infrastructure. So when this thing had a little cough, it crushed everything in certain parts. We'll get to what happened to the parts with the people in it in a second. 9:53. As the electrical system finishes the reboot cycle, the dynamic hydraulic actuators supporting the lower visitor center overcorrect for stability, not accounting for the shift in the wall lining of the nexial cavity in which the visitor center facility is anchored. 2 of the 6 structural supports are torn from their foundation, which causes the facility to list 20 degrees off vertical. The base joint of the vertical entry gantry is bent beyond its design limit angle. So the giant 8-story shopping mall gets broken a bit and does this, and now everyone's fallen over, and now you can't get out. 9:54. The master alarm is tripped automatically. Surface facilities are notified as response teams are given the orders to mobilize. 9:56. Park rangers are dispatched to rescue groups of visitors trapped in partially collapsed tunnels and trails. 10:03. Continued movement of the organism combined with rainwater causes one of the upper entry gantry supports to slip. An outbound elevator conducts an emergency stop, stranding over 24 visitors. 10:05, tremors registered as far away as the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. So this thing starting to cough and move is causing massive earthquakes across the state of Texas. 10:06, soil liquefaction destabilizes surface facilities in and around the organism. Dilation anchors begin retracting to keep the entry orifice open, so now this thing is trying to shut its mouth. 10:12. The master failsafe is activated by the automated park management system. 20,000 liters of acinitin compound are injected into the superorganism via a distributed network of relay stations located through its known internal anatomy. So essentially now they're trying to drug this thing. 10:12. Tremors and convulsions intensify as the entry gantry connection to the lower visitor center detaches completely. The lower visitor center begins to collapse downward into the nexial cavity. So that entire thing full of hundreds of people just starts falling deeper into the creature's stomach. 10:12. Peristaltic muscle action of the nexial cavity begins to exert substantial pressure on the outer structure of the lower visitor center facility. 10:15. The prime laboid junction just west of the Septum Falls geobiological feature flexes into an open position, releasing a torrent of lagogastric chyma into the dorsal trunk It is likely that this was the reaction to the acetylene injection. So essentially, because they tried to drug this thing, it started to throw up. 1016. Peristaltic spasms force the caustic chyma slurry through the nexial cavity and up through the lower and upper moisture crops towards the surface orifice. Okay. 1016. Many guests attempting to flee the stalled elevator near the entry orifice attempt climbing out of the upper moisture crop, but are ultimately unsuccessful due to torrential rains causing the surface to become very slippery. Many end up falling back into the maw. Now it's a sarlacc pit. People are literally trying to crawl out the sides and keep slipping back into the mouth. 1017. The chyma slurry erupts from the surface orifice in a geyser several hundred meters in height. Large pieces of undigested organic matter crush several vehicles and damage windows. So at this point, it's thrown up, meaning anyone who was still inside of this super acidic acid when it got shot out is, well, I mean,
started raining
now, but they're also melting. 1019. Following the several minute long ejecta event, a deep and incredibly loud roar erupts from the entry orifice as ground tremors intensify further. Large extremities begin surfacing through bedrock and soil approximately 30 to 120 kilometers from the entry orifice. So now other parts of this thing are shooting above the ground up to around 100 miles away from the mouth. 1025. The acid smell of the gastric ejection can be detected as far as Odessa, Texas. 1026. 2 Park Service vehicles and a tour vehicle containing Park Service employees and several guests attempt to ascend through the entry orifice tube. Because remember, way down in there and past different from the stomach, there were still these truckloads full of people. 1027. Peristaltic action crushes one of the tour vehicles and sucks the other 2 vehicles back into the nexial cavity and down into a digestive organ. These vehicles are presumed destroyed. So as they're trying to get out, it essentially swallows them, because now all the inside structures are broken and it's starting to actually move its body. 1058. The Pentagon is given authorization from the White House to use nuclear force if necessary to prevent the organism from entering an active and/or ambulatory state, which I'm not really sure that'd do anything, but okay. 1102.
Seems
The on-site
drastic.
operations director within the lower visitor center control room, so he's down there being crushed by the gullet, initiates a final failsafe measure in the form of the contingency measure. 1102. Master event log records successful spin-up of the contingency measure. So we don't know, and we're not going to know specifically what this contingency measure is, but I have a theory I'll talk about near the end. 1105. Lower visitor center structure integrity is critically compromised, resulting in total collapse, meaning everyone in that lower visitor center, including the operator who gave the contingency order, were killed by the crushing. 1105. Data connection with lower visitor center is severed, because it got crushed. 1113. Spasms and motor action of the superorganism begin to noticeably subside. Response teams begin to descend into the surface orifice to attempt rescue operations. 1119. Response team encounters visitor group which had attempted escape from stalled elevator. Most are dead, the remainder are mortally wounded and partially digested due to the caustic gastric ejecta. So it's just an elevator full of melting people. 1142. Radio contact and also when I say I mean like a cool because this is awesome. Radio contact established
as a
vehicle trapped within oyster shame due to ventricle closure. No feasible rescue strategy can be developed before complete mastication occurs. 1156. Response team confirms that contingency measure and associate facility are still intact and operating. 1158. Texas Governor Rick Perry formally declares a state of emergency for Gumption County. 1222. Response teams route data and power umbilical to new base camp in the contingency measure facility. 1235. 3 interpit life forms are identified as having been ejected onto the surface. 15 visitors are injured and 7 are hunted by inter-pit life forms during panicked evacuation of surface resort. So some of the people who were just on land and around are now being killed by the giant crab things that got shot onto the surface. 1241, park staff managed to kill the 3 large life forms. 102, National Guard helicopters begin delivering supplies and personnel to aid in site containment. 158, field hospital is constructed to care for wounded visitors and staff. 237, initial damage surveys report catastrophic destruction of internal park infrastructure. Pit geobiology has dramatically changed in hazard level. 3 a.m. Emergency teleconference of Anodyne Executive Leadership, National Parks Director, and Security of the Interior are present. 3:12. Executive decision is made to initiate FEMA response and assemble a task force for containing superorganism. 4. Media helicopters and vehicles begin to report on scope of disaster. 4:39. Base camp technicians begin to spin down contingency measure. Large fractures due to internal stretch have appeared on mineral components. Engineers advise against reinitializing contingency measure until mineral components can be replaced and repaired. 6:08. Ground personnel begin assembling a pump system to inject industrial sedatives into the superorganism. Transport trucks containing industrial sedative arrive. 9:45. Emergency teleconference of Anodyne shareholders. 11:20. Several injured visitors inexplicitly leave field hospital and begin walking towards open pit orifice. Approximately 38 individuals are able to crawl back into the orifice over the course of 8 hours.
It's like zombies.
3:51 p.m. Radio transmission from the trapped ranger vehicle ceases. Many speculate that other small groups of visitors and staff are still trapped, and that's the end of the relevant timeline. So a few things to note here. Essentially, all of these people died, and all of this occurred because the creature coughed and moved its arm a bit, to give you a scope of how huge this thing is. So if it's not clear, I'm pretty sure what's going on is there's several supernatural things happening just below the surface. The number one being the contingency measure. See, if you look on the map of the above ground section, there is a side place that is a ritual site. And apparently it was a ritual for the natives who would perform these sort of ceremonies in honor of this great being, or in order to keep it down, one way or the other. And on this device pictured, in which we can see what the contingency measure device looks like, it operates off some sort of mineral that they said became compromised while they were performing it. And obviously, whatever the contingency measure was, it worked, because only 13 minutes later, the creature went back to sleep. I think that this rock that is placed inside of this device in order to make this thing go back to sleep is an ancient relic of whatever this great spirit is that put this dragon underground. So the contingency measure itself is essentially worshiping it the way that the natives used to, and that, or alternatively worshiping the spirit that fights the dragon and therefore forcing it to go back to sleep. And this dragon itself, or at least that's as it's described in the old legends, has a sort of hold on the people that were in it, which is why 38 people who barely escaped with their lives crawled back into the mouth of this thing. I also want to mention the terrifying fact that transmission didn't cease with the one car that was cut off by a closed up mouth, or essentially tubule of this thing. That probably still survived and either died of starvation or were eaten by the creatures down there or something, because they were on the radio for like 14 hours and then went out, and then it says they never got them out, which who knows how they went. And at the end of this entire thing, the report essentially says that it's Anodyne's fault that any of this ever happened, and the company shut down shortly afterwards and went bankrupt because, you know, public opinion wasn't exactly great after this. And as far as that limb that raised above the ground, this is what that looked like. 100 miles away, this giant thing that shot miles and miles into the air is just maybe a shoulder or an arm or even a finger of whatever this creature is. I also want to mention, to further back up my theory about the contingency plan being a sort of religious or ceremonial kind of thing, in the Q&A, someone asked rumors of religious facilities built within the pit, and in the answer, Trevor says, "I don't have many details on it, but the contingency measure facility referenced in the 2007 disaster overview report was designated as an ecclesiastical religious observance facility in a 1998 GSA construction budget report. Make of that what you will. So absolutely, whatever this contingency report is, it's something spiritual, and whatever it is, it worked. Also on a chart that shows you signs of the Mystery Flesh National Park, and one of them that you can see in 1973, it says ecclesiastical personnel proceed to ritual site encampment. So even in 73, when they were putting this together, they realized there was some ritual practice that went into it. And then if you look at the modern signage that is up, it is a 10,000 volt electric fence that says, "Attention, extreme danger, stop, this area has been quarantined for your safety." Fact, over 582 people have died attempting to commune with the superorganism. Fact, the US government is unable to rescue individuals trapped by the superorganism. Fact, you will not receive a gift from the superorganism.
That's
and
creepy.
Fact, you will find no answers beyond this fence. There is nothing beyond this fence worth dying for. So that whole idea that they have to put up signs saying there's no answers past this and you won't find out anything more goes to say that there has to be at least some people around the area who think the pit holds these special or spiritual properties. And now the pit essentially works as a derelict, left behind establishment of what it once was, with large companies existing that are owned by the government, and there's absolutely no current day records of what they're doing, but it's something they call the reclamation. So what some may think is essentially getting back their resources is probably actually another corporate way of trying to get resources out of the pit, which I'm sure won't go wrong ever. But the 2007 event and the fact that all of it got shut down over it is the reason the entire presentation of everything that you read on the website is of a now defunct park, because it has been shut down and has just been used as a sort of scavenging project since. And the Mystery Flesh Pit National Park is now a monument to man's arrogance and exists as a sort of forgotten memory, only mainly remembered by the many dead that are a symptom of man trying to enter themselves into something that they don't fully understand. And as a quick little tangent off of that, would this not make the best survival horror video game ever? Like, I mean ever. Every single second of the setting is fantastic. You have all of the possible vehicles that the player could use mapped out, and in stuff that I didn't really get into, describe how it works. You have an evil company that is trying to gather resources from it, even though it's supposed to be defunct. You have a very long list of different enemy types, some of them these giant bugs and some of them these amorphous blogs that can attack you. You have all the different weapons laid out for you. It talks about people use guns, but that the giant laser bolt shooter guns are the best. And like, there's so much you could do with it. You even have save points. You have these blue lit phones known as lighthouses throughout the entire map, and you got a map that's mapped out for you that you could use as save points. And then you have all the suits and you have the different character models, and like, you even have a plot. You have the plot of the event that happened, and now they're sending in agents on top secret missions to reclaim stuff, and you have this whole underlying thing of like spiritual ritual, and oh my gosh, this would be so cool. It blows my mind that, to the best of my knowledge, this is the first YouTube video ever talking about this thing, because this is one of the coolest,
Yeah, I've never heard anything like
super
this.
absurd cosmic horror
And
pieces
it's very like original. I don't think I've ever heard a story like this at all.
ever heard of, and it needs more attention. And if this thing, like, if he doesn't make like a book, I think he has a book in the works, but like, if he needs like a narrative, let me at this. I want to write something for this, or like get it to a video game developer. I don't know. This is so cool. I want to see more done with it. Trevor really has something special on his hands. And like, not just from everything that I talked about, but I say this a lot in videos, but I really mean it. Please go to the original website, not only to support him through either his Patreon, or he even has a really cool merch shop that's like Mystery Flesh Pit National Park, like hats and hoodies and t-shirts. But like, I barely touched the surface. There's information about Anodyne. There's information about how details of it work. There's this long science article that talks about how the infrastructure works and how the pipelines work and the architecture that went into the pit. And like, he's done so much, and there's so much fantastic content here. And if this interests you even a little bit, and even if you don't read, I don't care. It's so good. Please check this out. It's worth your time. If you can't tell at this point, I'm a big fan. And I didn't even read all the letters. I didn't read all the propaganda that they did as a means of explaining what the park is, or through the Cooper cave guy who like talks about how creepy the pit is, but why kids don't need to be afraid. I didn't read all the letters. I didn't even read the newspaper article that explains who Jim Jackson is. What I did is hit the highlights so you could have a basic narrative understanding that I did not have going into this, which I personally found as being fun not knowing going into this, because then I had to put it together myself. But now you can check it out for yourself, get a better understanding of the artwork, the lore, and all the supplemental materials that go into this, because this thing is still going on and Trevor is still adding new bits to the lore and making new artwork, and this is an incredibly talented and fantastic work. And once again, I'm telling you, if you like this even a little bit, check it out. It's worth your time. But regardless,
Okay, I'm pretty sure that's the end. I don't see anything really else. But that was amazing. That was such a great story. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I really did, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.